There's a biological rule that's absolute, non-negotiable and terrifying. It's called the rule of 3. You last 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. Nature is a countdown that never stops. It's an efficient elimination mechanism designed to wipe off the map any organism that fails to secure these resources. If you break the 3-day rule, human physiology enters a spiral of horror. Your blood loses volume and turns into sludge, thick as motor oil. Your heart has to pump twice as hard just to keep things flowing. Your kidneys, unable to filter toxins without fluid, shut down silently. Your brain physically shrinks inside your skull, pulling on pain-sensitive membranes. Delirium is the last mercy your system offers before the final blackout, before death. We built our entire civilization, our megacities, our trillion-dollar economies, our daily routines based on a single arrogant bet that water would always come out of the tap. We assumed the planet would be kind forever. We were wrong. Climate hell isn't a prediction for 2100. It's already begun. The ground zero of global drought is expanding, devouring fertile lands from California to southern Spain, from Brazil's interior to China's plains. But by natural logic, the first place that should have disappeared off the map, the first domino to fall, is a small strip of land in the Middle East. Look at the data. No major rivers, no regular rainfall, half the territory classified as absolute desert, surrounded by geopolitical enemies who'd love to cut off their supply, and temperatures that cook the soil. Israel is, geographically, hell on earth. It should be a graveyard of civilizations, a wasteland where history ends. But if you look at it via satellite today, you don't see death. You see a glitch in reality. Where there should be beige sand and barren rock, there's the neon green of precision agriculture. Where there should be rationing and thirst, there are overflowing pools and water abundance that humiliates tropical nations. They didn't survive by luck. They didn't pray for rain. They survived because they built something humanity had never seen before. They built a survival machine, a colossal integrated artificial system that replaced nature. Today, on Global Vector, we're going to open the control panel of this machine. We'll understand how they hacked physics inside hell to cheat death, and more importantly, why this machine is the only thing separating your future from extinction. Welcome to the Israel dossier. To understand why they needed to build this machine, you need to smell the fear that hung in the air in 2008. Israel was staring into the abyss. A biblical drought, lasting a decade, had drained the nation's natural resources to the bone. The Sea of Galilee, not just a tourist spot, but the strategic, spiritual and vital reservoir of the nation, had dropped to the dreaded black line. If the water level fell a few more centimeters below that line, the pressure from the sludge at the bottom would release toxins and salt would infiltrate the aquifer. The lake would die. Forever. In the cities, the government launched desperate campaigns. On TV, celebrities appeared with cracking, drying skin, begging people to take showers under 2 minutes. The panic was real. Intelligence reports showed that in 12 months, Tel Aviv's taps could simply stop dripping. Geography had delivered its ultimatum. You're not welcome here. They had 2 options. The first was contraction, reduce the population, abandon agriculture, import water in tanker ships, and accept the slow decline until the country's end. The second option was to declare war against Earth itself. They chose war. The government made a decision that seemed like science fiction. We're going to disconnect our dependence on the sky. If nature refuses to give us rain, we'll manufacture it. The plan was to build a series of industrial fortresses along the coast, not just plants, but gigantic mechanical organs capable of processing the ocean. The idea was to create an artificial circulatory system for an entire country. That's how the machine was born. The first piece of this machine sits in Sorek, and to understand the scale of this, you need to forget human scale. Nothing here was made for human hands or eyes. Everything was built to tame monsters. The first line of defense against extinction isn't a military wall. It's an artery of reinforced concrete buried at the bottom of the sea, extending for kilometers into the Mediterranean. These intake pipes have diameters so absurd that you could drive a school bus through them without scratching the mirrors. They don't sip the sea. They swallow it whole. We're talking about millions of tons of water being ripped from the ocean every hour. And the ocean, like any wild beast, fights not to be captured. The water enters with force, bringing sand, algae, fish, sludge, and debris. Once inside the plant, the water meets its first enemy, thermodynamics. Seawater is a hostile chemical and biological soup. It's poison. Every liter contains 35 grams of dissolved salts. Magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium. It's an osmotic bomb. Try drinking it, and your cells shrivel and die. Try irrigating with it, and you salt the earth forever, creating a chemical desert where nothing grows for 1,000 years. The legendary salting the earth of Carthage. To transform this poison into life, the plant needs to stop being a civil construction and become a quantum physics laboratory on an industrial scale. Welcome to the heart of the anomaly, the membrane hall. If the pump room was the muscle of the machine, this is the brain. And this is where physical megaphobia gives way to atomic precision. The process is called reverse osmosis. In theory, it's simple. In practice, it's an act of controlled violence. Imagine you need to pass a golf ball through a solid concrete wall. Impossible, right? The wall is too dense, the ball is too big. Unless you have enough force to push matter through matter. Inside these thousands of white tubes that line up like soldiers in an infinite hangar, water is pressurized to 70 atmospheres. To put this in visceral perspective, imagine a modern war tank, weighing 60 tons, balanced entirely on the tip of your index finger. That's the pressure happening inside these tubes, inches from your face. The vibration in the floor is constant. It's the pulse of a machine fighting against nature. If there's a micro crack in the stainless steel, the water doesn't leak. It fires like a laser-cutting jet, capable of decapitating a man or cutting through metal like butter. Inside the tubes exists the technology that cheated death, the semi-permeable membrane. An alien polymer rolled in a spiral, with pores so small we need electron microscopes to see them. It works as the most merciless doorman in the universe. The water molecule, H2O, is tiny. Under the pressure of the war tank, it's squeezed through the pores. It passes. But the salt ion wrapped in its hydration layer is slightly larger. It hits the membrane wall and is blocked. Viruses? Blocked. Bacteria? Blocked. Heavy metals? Blocked. Death stays on the outside. Life passes to the inside. But here was the fatal problem that prevented the world from copying Israel. Creating that 70 atmosphere pressure costs billions in electricity. Historically, desalinating water was like burning money to put out a fire. The energy needed to push water against the membrane made the process unviable. It was economic suicide. That's when Israeli engineers introduced a piece into the machine that seems to violate the laws of energy exchange. They call it the isobaric energy recovery device. The concept is genius in its simplicity and brutal in its execution. The salt water that was rejected by the membrane, the dirty water full of concentrated salt, is still under that monstrous pressure of 70 atmospheres. The old system simply threw this water away. Wasting all the force, the engineers designed a system that captures that pressure. Like a judoka using an opponent's force to take them down, the machine takes the pressure from the wastewater that's leaving and mechanically transfers it to the new water that's entering. The result is an almost perpetual cycle of efficiency. They recover 98% of the pressure energy. They hacked the electric bill. Suddenly, the impossible became cheap. The cost of water dropped from dollars to cents. Sorek B doesn't just produce a flow, it creates an instant artificial river. We're talking about 200 million cubic meters of drinking water per year, coming out of a single building. The sensors confirm salinity dropped to zero. What was a hostile, poisonous ocean minutes ago is now the purest water on the planet. The desert was cancelled by engineering decree. But in physics, there's no free lunch. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And in this case, the machine's reaction was toxic. We extracted life from the water. But what was left? What remained was a concentrated, dense and lethal substance called brine. For every liter of fresh water that saved an Israeli child, the plant produced 1.5 liters of this super-saturated chemical sludge. They had solved the drought problem, but they'd created a new ecological monster. If you dump millions of tons of this concentrated salt into the sea at a single point, it doesn't mix. It's heavy. It sinks like liquid lead. It spreads across the ocean floor, creating a dead zone. Any fish, plant or coral touched by this saline fog dies instantly, asphyxiated. The osmotic pressure sucks the water out from inside the fish. It's a horrible death. Israel had just saved its human population, but was about to murder the ecosystem that gave them life. The technological solution had turned into an environmental time bomb. The solution to the poison was surgical dispersion. Instead of a giant sewage pipe, Israel built a complex underwater vascular system. High-tech diffusers spread the brine in microscopic jets miles from the coast. They're mathematically calculated to be caught by deep currents and instantly diluted. The salt returns to its origin without leaving traces. The ecological crime was avoided. The machine learned to clean up its own tracks. But the drinking water created here had one last bizarre problem. The technology worked too well. The water that comes out of the reverse osmosis membranes is so pure it's dangerous. It's distilled H2O. No minerals, no taste, no soul. If you drink only this, your body collapses from lack of magnesium and calcium. Your heart can fail. Besides, the empty water is hungry. If you throw it into distribution pipes, it corrodes the metal and concrete, searching for ions to stabilize itself. The final irony? After spending billions to clean the water, they need to spend millions to dirty it again. The water passes through giant beds of dissolved limestone to gain calcium and flavor. We didn't just copy nature. We had to chemically improve it so it would be compatible with human life. It's Frankenstein water. Water designed molecule by molecule. And with this artificial water, they did the unthinkable. Saving the ocean and creating water was just the beginning. The final act of geographic defiance, the true cheating death, was about to happen in the country's interior. Throughout Earth's entire geological history, gravity dictated a simple rule. Water flows down from mountains to the sea. Israel looked at this law of physics and said, "Not anymore." They inaugurated the Reverse River Project. Remember the Sea of Galilee? The lake where sacred texts say Jesus walked on water? It was dying. Evaporation and overuse had turned it into a shrinking puddle. The lake's death would mean the death of agriculture in the north. To save it, Israel built a network of steel pipes with diameter enough to swallow a car, equipped with pumps that defy gravity and consume the energy of a small city. They took water from the Mediterranean, purified it at Sorek, and started pumping it uphill. They're filling a natural lake with artificial water. The water bathing the shores of Tiberias today began its journey as salt water in the ocean just 48 hours ago. At this exact moment, the nation disconnected its dependence on the sky. They cut the umbilical cord with nature. If it rains, great. If it doesn't rain, the lake fills anyway. The apocalypse was cancelled. The lake's death was reversed. This isn't just engineering. It's industrial resurrection. But the survival machine doesn't stop at the tap. Having water is one thing. Not wasting it is another. And in a place that's hell on earth, waste is a capital sin. In any city in the world, London, New York, São Paulo, about 30% to 50% of treated water is lost in leaks before reaching your home. Old pipes, cracks. It's like pumping blood into a body full of cuts. In Israel, the loss is under 7%. They transformed the water network into a cybernetic grid. Acoustic sensors and artificial intelligence listen to the sound of water in underground pipes to detect leaks. But the real magic, the real affront to death, happens after you flush the toilet. In the developed world, we treat sewage as trash. Israel looked at sewage and saw gold. They created the purple pipe revolution. 90% of Israel's sewage is captured, treated, and purified to an almost drinkable level. But they don't drink it. They send it to hell, the Negev desert. Israel's agriculture, the tomatoes, dates, peppers they export to Europe, is irrigated with recycled water. Tel Aviv's sewage becomes the desert's fertilizer. It's a closed loop. The sea becomes drinking water becomes sewage. Sewage becomes agricultural water. Agricultural water becomes food, and food sustains the nation. The desert wastes nothing. They farm fish in the middle of the dunes using underground brackish water. Where before there were only scorpions and dust, now exist the most productive plantations on the planet. This is future-proof in practice. It's creating a system immune to climate chaos. Looking at this fortress of concrete and water, it's impossible not to feel a shiver. It's a glorious vision, yes, but it's also terrifying. We crossed an invisible line. For 200,000 years, man looked at the sky and begged for water. Now we look at a control panel and decide the level of our rivers. We took the reins of the planet. But when you become the owner of rain, you become the owner of everyone's destiny around you. Israel now has something more valuable than oil, more lethal than ballistic missiles. They have the on and off button for their neighbors' thirst. Water, historically, was the fuel for wars in this piece of land. Today, paradoxically, it's the only thing keeping the peace. With their reservoirs overflowing, Israel reversed the logic of power. They didn't just guarantee their own survival, they became the life support of the region. The recent agreement is simple and brutally efficient. Israel pumps 200 million cubic meters of water from the machine to Jordan, a country that's literally drying to death. In exchange, Jordan builds giant solar fields in the desert to send electricity to Israel. Water for energy. Engineering created a physical interdependence that no extremist politician can easily undo. This is hydro-diplomacy. When you depend on your neighbor not to die of thirst, and they depend on you to turn on the lights, the cost of starting a war becomes too high. Water stopped being a resource of conflict. It became the stabilization weapon. Remember the apocalyptic scenario we started with? The physiological collapse, the thirst, death in 3 days. It was cancelled in that piece of land. The geographic catastrophe was nullified by a strategic decision to invest in concrete, intelligence, and technology. They bought their freedom from nature. But as we look at this technological miracle in the desert, an uncomfortable and violent question echoes across the rest of the planet. Why do nations with giant rivers, tropical rains, and infinite aquifers, like Brazil, India, or parts of the United States, still live in fear of a dry tap? How is it possible that Cape Town reached day zero? How is it possible that California, the 5th largest economy in the world, imposes rationing, while a country made of sand and salt exports water? The lesson from Israel, and the reason this dossier exists, is a slap in the face of global fatalism. They proved that scarcity isn't divine punishment. Scarcity isn't bad luck. Scarcity is a management failure. It's a political choice. It's incompetence disguised as climate fate. What we saw here isn't just about water. It's about the future of our species over the next 100 years. The climate will be hostile. Nature will try to evict us. Rain patterns will change. We have 2 options. We can keep acting like victims, praying for rain, or we can build our own survival machines. The technology to save us already exists. The plants are designed. The concrete is ready. The membranes work. The only thing left to know is whether we'll have the courage to build our defenses before time runs out, because the desert doesn't wait. Geographic hell is expanding, and engineering is the only real barrier left between civilization and chaos. In the end, there are no miracles. What happened here was the result of a brutal equation. Extreme pressure plus applied intelligence equals future-proof. Israel proved we can beat nature. We can cheat death. But the price of this victory is eternal vigilance. The machine can never stop. Now I pass the word to Central Command. You, looking at the speed of your country's response, do you believe we're building the necessary defenses, or are we just postponing an inevitable collapse? Leave your theory in the comments. If this dossier brought strategic clarity to you about how the world really works, confirm your subscription to Global Vector. Here, we don't ignore warnings from the future. We prepare for them. Water was tamed in the desert, but drought is just one of the collapse vectors. While Israel fights the sea, China is waging war against the Earth's crust itself to prepare for something much worse. The complete dossier on Chinese mega engineering is in this video here. I'm the Sentinel. Eyes open.